In this particular video, I plan to be very succinct. There are 2 points I hope to make pertaining to the economy and the stock market. The first is that unless you are extremely lucky, extremely well connected, or you know someone who is extremely lucky or extremely well connected, you should not currently invest in the stock market. Then you hear people appeal to authority. They say these financial experts are talking about how good the markets are. Anytime you hear someone call themselves a financial expert, you should be very scrupulous pertaining to their information. And that's because, unlike history, unlike political science, unlike science itself, economics is a multi-layered, multifaceted subject. The first thing you got to study is psychology, human behavior. The cash flows from the human to the corporation. And the corporation that is getting the most traction is the corporation that is gaining the most cash flow from particular consumers. It also involves history. You have to look back at certain historical events like the dot-com bubble, the broker car loans, which led to the Great Depression. It also involves resources with alternative uses. That's why I'm always very incredulous when I hear these so-called financial experts talking about how we should invest when the market reaches all-time highs. Speaking of history, historically speaking, if you look at the 1990s, the dot-com bubble, and the 2008 housing bubble, right before the crash, as the precipitous fall began, these same analysts were telling people to keep investing. So let me get into the specific reason why I don't think, unless you're well connected or extremely lucky, you should invest in the stock market. The question is not how much is it growing, but where is the cash flow happening? Human psychology, right? What specific corporations are gaining the most traction in the markets? Well, just like in the 1990s, you had 4 mega technology stocks, and the Nasdaq reached its all-time high in 2000. So those 4 stocks, which today and at the time were referred to as the 4 horsemen, were Microsoft, Intel, Cisco, and Dell. And the reason they were known as the 4 horsemen is because of their market value dominance. And that early traction created euphoria that led to the dot-com bubble. So 3 years after you had the S&P index, it lost half of its value. 3 years after those massive gains. Well, today, we've had a 50% surge in the Nasdaq over the past year, and a 30% gain in the S&P 500. But if you look at where those gains coming from, you have 5 mega cap technology stocks. You have Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. So if you look at the similarities from a historical perspective between the 4 horsemen of 2000 and the 5 caps in 2020, you see that they have tremendous cumulative weight. So 17.3% of all the market gains are going to 5 specific corporations. Now, if you say to yourself, let me invest in those corporations, what you've got to realize is the gain of 17.3%, if you combine them all, is not very large in itself. If you pay $3,000 for stock in Amazon, I don't know what the price is right now, I'm not too involved in the markets, then at the most you can hope to get a 5% return, which is a safe, steady investment if everything goes right. But if the market were to drop precipitously, you would lose a big percentage of wealth pertaining to the markets. That's my first point. My first point is do not invest in the markets unless you're extremely well connected or extremely lucky if you hope to make a large percentage of wealth. Now, my second point is that most of this value that's being created is not from a physical good being produced. It's not General Motors making cars. It's not McDonald's making hamburgers. It is Facebook. Think about Facebook. What does Facebook primarily make its money on? Advertising revenue. That money, that cash flow, is flowing from the advertiser to Facebook. None of that money is going to the regular American people. Think about Amazon. Amazon's basically the middleman, getting cheap shit from China to your front door. American workers aren't producing those goods. American workers are not in factories making those goods. Same thing with Apple. That's why the economy is not working for the little guy anymore. We're not producing anything. Manufacturing is not even a high percentage. 79% of our economy, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, is in service jobs that don't pay well. That's why the economy no longer works for the little guy. You're getting cheap shit from China or advertising, and that's all it is. That's what our economy is primarily built on at the moment. Those are the 2 points I hope to make, and I hope I made them in a coherent fashion.